Hello, and welcome to the Monthly Mystical once again. And it's lovely to see you all. I hope you're not too hot in this hot weather. It's very hot in sunny England. I don't know about where you are. Let me know in the comments. What's it like in your area where you are? Is it hot, sunny, rainy? I'm assuming it's hot. Right, so at the minute, I forgot to cut them out. So before we start, if you can get a hold of some little pictures of some skulls. Hi, Carl. We need 2 to 3 inches. We need 8 of them. I don't know why, but I'm doing it anyway, so everybody can do it in their own time. If you haven't done it, that's fine. Because if you didn't see that message, because unfortunately Steve not telling us beforehand so we can get all this, but I should have done it in the intro to this, but it's all good. Right, I've done 2 anyway. So lovely to have you all on board this evening, and I hope you're all well. I'm still going to cut my little skulls out. But in the meantime, I will give everybody just a couple of seconds just to pop on. Hopefully you've got a notification from YouTube. That would have been very nice. Thank you, YouTube. We love you. Yes, we do. Oh, where's the end of that one? There we go. So I've got 3 so far. Okay. Right. So, yes, we'll give it another couple of minutes. In the meantime, so we've got, this is part 2 of a 3-parter that we had a chat about a couple of weeks ago. And we did, Steve did a big long thing, but now we've made it into shorter versions to make it more into certain parts of the talk. So there we go. I can't do 2 things at once anymore. It's quite difficult to talk and cut things out. But it's all good. So yeah. So let's see. Oh, there's a couple of people on. Say hello in the chat. Let me know who's joined us. If you can, if you're able to. I know that some people are on their phones and are not logged on or whatever it is you have to be to do the chat, which is fine. But it'd be lovely if you say hello for me, just so I know who's here. This is going to be really interesting. I'm really looking forward to this, because if you watch the original chat, it got really interesting about the skulls, and I'm thinking, wow, this is fascinating, absolutely fascinating. And I'm almost there, so I'll stop babbling. I've got 2 to go. Anybody? Oh, there's another couple of people. Okay, so please say hello in the chat. It'd be lovely. Thank you. Let me know you're there. This is going to be a really, really, really fabulous talk, and I'm very excited. And I don't think I've messed it up this time. I think I'm doing the right thing. Last time, I still got my tube. Last time he says, get a toilet roll. So I come with a big toilet roll, because he didn't say toilet roll tube. Silly me thinking, well, what's he going to do with the whole toilet? Yeah, well, you know. So anyway, that was sorted out. So if you didn't see that one, that was part 1. Look on the last live, and you can get access to that chat. And that was the beginning of this part 3 or 3-parter. And it was really interesting about the caves and stuff. So yeah, have a look at that one if you haven't already. Yeah, because that was really interesting. And today is going to be a mega treat. Right, so I've done my skulls. I've let people a bit of time to log in. If you're there, you're there. If you're not, you should be. All right, so before we start, please do subscribe to the channel and like this video if you're not on the live or whatever. Yeah, please. That would be so helpful. And it helps us bring the channel up, let more people know what's going on, and we can get more people on to do some mega talks. That would be really cool. All right, so I'm stop babbling now. And we will bring to the stage the amazing Steve. Hello.
Hello.
Good
Evening
evening,
all. Evening
Graham.
all. How can you
Oh,
tell?
evening, Graham and Autumn Owl. What?
I've not worked out on here. I tried to join the chat and it won't let me link YouTube up or anything like that. So I don't know how anyone's managing to actually kind of be part of the
Okay.
chat.
Oh, but
Sometimes
you
it's
saw the
useful to
chat
be able.
last time, didn't you?
Pardon?
You did see the chat last time.
Yeah, I see the chat, but sometimes it's useful to type a few things in or a few links into there as well so people can kind of see
Oh,
stuff ongoing,
okay.
really. Um,
Okay. Well, the only way I know how you can do that is by doing it on the YouTube, on the actual video for you, I think.
right.
And I can't
Hey,
figure out how to do it unless I pay 40 quid a month, then then I can do lots more apparently. But
Yay! Yes, they keep threatening you, don't they? Oh, pay an extra fiver, pay an extra £2, pay an extra
yeah,
£8. By the time you paid it all out, you might as well just take a mortgage out on it all.
exactly. I'll
Anyway,
go and visit
here
them
we
all.
are.
You have to open the app, Carl says. What app? I don't know what app he's
I've
talking
not
about.
even found. All I've done is I've clicked on join the chat, and it takes me through all kinds of hoops, and then it
You have to
finally
open the
says,
app. I think he means YouTube. Maybe you have to you have to be on YouTube. Because you
"Let's
can
not
type
worry
in
about it."
YouTube. When I go
Yeah.
on YouTube now, I can do it. So I
Oh,
can go on the chat and say hello. So you should be able to do that as well. Because
yes.
I've put live chat. I've put it onto the live chat now, so everybody should be able to see it. Anyway, it's a bit
Anyway,
delayed. So it's
the
quite
the, the
funny because
point.
the
Yes.
chat's not delayed.
Oh, right. Okay. So where are you
But
on YouTube?
Magic Toolbox UK. If you go onto our thing, so you could have just clicked on the link that's on Facebook.
Do you know that would be so clever, wouldn't it? That would imply some kind of,
That would have been
it would
quicker.
have been Magic
Let's see.
Toolbox UK.
That's
I
me.
don't think that's you.
And while
It
we're
says
talking about the Magic Toolbox UK,
right.
yes, uh, you can buy lots of amazing things on there.
You
Have a look,
can.
please. Have a look on the website. There's some really cool stuff. And if you want anything making that's really obscure that you can't get a hold of, then give us a shout because we make absolutely anything. Hi, JBX. You guys ever seen a what? Sorry, a First Crusade Templar coin? Have you? No, I haven't.
No, sounds quite cool.
Yeah. Carl says that's as technical as I get. Well done, Carl.
Oh, right. There's a lot of delay, isn't there?
Yeah. So you might have to mute the conversation, otherwise it will just come through on the chat on our
Yes.
thing now. Um,
Um,
Scroll under the pic and click join chat.
yeah, I did that. It wouldn't let me.
Oh, there we go.
Anyway, listen, we've been talking now for 10 minutes and we haven't actually
Oh,
even
let's get
mentioned,
on.
we
We haven't
haven't
even
even
started
mentioned
anything yet.
scrolls or Knights Templar or
Let's
indeed
go.
First Crusade Templar coins, indeed. Send us one of those straight over. I'd love to see one of those. I will
Yes, we
say,
would.
I'm not actually a kind of Knights Templar expert, but I've read a lot.
Me
I've
neither.
read into stuff and I've kind of ended down the right Knights Templar thing by a bit of a wormhole, a bit of a rabbit hole, if you like. It wasn't by intent at all. It was really kind of totally linked to our original investigations in the local area. We essentially were looking into, I mentioned this last time, sacred landscape and how different things are used within the landscape to make it even more sacred. And as part of that investigation, if you like, we kept bumping into Knights Templar. And then when I got really interested in Skull, listen, I've actually gone halfway through my talk by saying this, so I'm going to jump backwards.
Let's go back.
Let's go back. Let's go back. Can we have some slides on, please?
You
Some
certainly
slides.
can. Hang on.
Excellent.
2BX. There we go. Right. Add to the stage. There we go.
Yay! There they go. So
Yay.
there's the title screen there. So if we go down to number 2, please.
There we
Excellent
are.
stuff. We're getting good at this now, aren't we? It's almost as though
Yeah.
what I'm going to say next. So there we go. So as I say, the actual investigation, if you like, this we've been looking at a local area for many years, and to cut a long story short, because that's really, if you like, part of the first part of the talk, but we just need to go over it very, very, very quickly. We were looking around our local area at sacred landscape. We were looking at modified landscape and how they all tie together. And we were particularly kind of interested in what you might call tuts or toots. And there's lots of toots and tuts around. In fact, there's a lot more of them that aren't called a toot or a tut, but these are just a really, really good example here of what's going on. And essentially, we came to the conclusion that a couple of things were happening in the landscape that made it, shall we say, sacred, that made it magical. And they were all down to geology, essentially, and they were down to layers within geology. And we did a little bit of an experiment last week with layers of silver foil. I've got some here. And we had layers of silver foil. That wasn't the silver foil, that's the silver foil, clearly. And paper. And we actually did a little bit of measuring, didn't we? Now, we're going to need to do a little bit of measuring in a second, so I'll teach you how to do that just in case you can't already. But what we were doing really was comparing the sort of way these layers make up, essentially a condenser. They kind of create a capacitor effect when you put lots of layers together. That is, they store energy. Unlike a battery, which kind of generates energy, they store. Now, that's not to say that the landscape can't also act as a battery and generate its own energy, but that gets slightly more complicated, out of my remit at the moment. But the most important thing to notice is that not only do we find landscapes that do this, we find man-made, artificial additions to the landscape. You can see a few of them there. Totenho, Tutbury, which is just literally a few hundred yards up from here, Tootil and so forth. And you can see a paring back of how these man-made artifacts are created using layers. And those layers effectively generate what we might call I've used the wrong word again, because I'm back to batteries. I keep getting told off by using the battery capacitor. They absorb and then they pump out little bits of electromagnetic energy. Quite a lot of charge in some cases. So can we go down to number 3, please? So what I've just been talking about in terms of the hills, the toots, was very much part of an exploration that we've been doing over a number of years, and kind of came to fruits last year, where we essentially plotted out using an OS map, essentially all the kind of layers, the geological structures of our local landscape. And noticed how the river ran through it and how the landscape itself kind of created layers from glacial till, all kinds of stuff that came together. And then I got to thinking along the way, well, what does this all do? How does this impact us? How does it change us? What's going on? And more importantly, what have we missed out in our equation? Because our local landscape, in all honesty, there's not a lot of what we can see here, caves, unless you kind of travel out. And we've tried to limit ourselves, because otherwise you end up all over the place and you get quite lost in what you're trying to research. So we thought, well, what have caves got to do with the whole function? So we did another experiment, and this is where the toilet roll came in last week. And Jackie, do you remember what we did with the toilet roll?
Yes. How can I forget?
Hey! The interesting thing was we attuned to electromagnetism, and I'm going to talk about that in 2 seconds, so don't worry. Okay, and we tuned to the electromagnetic effects of layers, first of all, and we were able to sense them, weren't we? And then a very strange thing happened when we added those layers into our toilet roll. Can you remember what you felt?
Yeah, claustrophobic.
This was very weird.
It was kind of like, it felt very heavy and like enclosed, and
and you were on the outside of the toilet roll as well, and there's the
yeah.
So we what I love is creating experiments that are tabletop experiments, stuff you can do at home, stuff you can try out, and you can share your results and find out just how similar people's results are, and quite often as well how different things come out. So Jackie, you're the first person who's kind of mentioned feeling claustrophobic with a toilet roll wrapped in silver paper and silver paper. But to be honest with you, last week was pretty much the first time I'd done the toilet roll experiment. So I like to introduce new things, and most of the time I don't know what's going to go on, and that makes it even more exciting, in my opinion. Because I have an idea and I think, well, how can I replicate this as a tabletop? How can I replicate a sacred landscape, something that's going on around us? Can we replicate it and make it happen here and now? Because otherwise you're going to have to trudge out and take your dowsing rods out and your little machines that go ping and measure everything and track across the country and compare and contrast, which is ace. I love it. But it's just quite cool, and it's good when you're in a talk as well. When we go out live and meet people in a big room, you can do these experiments, and they can actually feel and see what's going on. It's very immersive. So we're going to jump to our next slide, please.
Ooh.
Oh, I think I've got more slides than I've got actually. Notes. Or possibly I've lost a slide and got some notes. Okie dokie. So I do need you, before we carry on, to all do this very, very simple experiment. If you haven't done it before, try it out again. What we're looking essentially is to find a way to describe what we're sensing without using the E word. Because once we start using the E word can mean anything. It can mean ET for all I care. Whereas what we really want to describe, so we're all on the same page, is what we sense. The sensation. What do you feel? So if you haven't done this before, do it. If you have done this before, do it as well. Join in. So what I tend to do is put my hands maybe a foot or so apart and just gently and slowly bring them together. If anyone wants to throw some answers onto the chat, I'll see those goes past. In the meantime,
I'm not going to say this time because everybody else needs to say, as I always say.
Well, that's because it's me and you on the old YouTube, and everyone else is just kind of going.
Well, they need to join in. Come on, join in.
They need to join in. Yes.
Join in. What is it you feel in between the hands?
Funny enough, if it's on Zoom, it's very easy to get people to join in because I just go, you over there, Graham, or whatever.
Yeah,
what do you feel? Carl, Jay, resistance. There we go. We found, yes, a number of words we chose last week. One of them was, like you say, resistance, like a kind of the opposite of a magnet, I guess, which is very interesting because we're talking about electromagnetism. So we're talking about kind of bounce. We're talking about electrons. We're talking about how they both repel and attract. And that is effectively the universe as we understand it. So that is essentially what we're sensing. It comes down to that. It's really easy. We can add all kinds of wonderful words on. You can add your aura words or your Reiki words or your ET words or your energy words or whatever. But at the end of the day, what we're really doing is we're sensing electricity or electromagnetism. Okay. So the question is, how's all of this working? And, you know, what kicks this all off, if you like? What's the mechanism? And the interesting thing is that when we look at our skull, if I put this right to the screen, it'll look like a proper big-sized skull, but it ain't. It's made out of papier-mâché, but it looks slightly cool, I guess. When we look inside our skull, we can find a number of things. First of all, obviously, on the left-hand side, the biggie that we talked about last week was the pineal gland. And the pineal gland effectively, cuts, long story short, if you want to know why, go and check out the previous video. Pineal gland effectively connects to our sense of reality and our sense of expanded reality. And I'll use that loosely because, of course, our sense of expanded reality is just more reality, isn't it? Just in a different way. Just some people insist on everything being neurotypical and this is exactly how it goes. And some of us go, well, actually, no, it ain't. So that's what, the mechanism is. the pineal gland. It's like a little antenna in there, and you'll notice it's pretty much. I'm pointing at my screen over here. That's no help to anyone, is it? But you can see that it's pretty much kind of in the centre there, just slightly offset by the plexus there of the skull, which gives the skull a great way to kind of focus in, if you like, on there. So this is where the skull comes in. This is why the skull is important, shall we say. And yes, I'm just looking at my notes. I might be running with a completely wrong set of notes. I think I'm running with the wrong set of notes. Would you bear with me, but just 2 seconds?
No problem.
Just 2 seconds. Just 2 seconds. I seem to have lost something very, very, very important. And I've opened up the document to kind of run with it. And I might just have to run with it anyway and just work it out as we go along and remember things, which I'm not very, very, very good at doing. So I'm
It's all right. We'll put some rock music on while we're waiting.
You go for that.
Have a boogie.
Well, hey ho. I've lost some stuff. Oh no, I know where it's gone. I'm having a moment. I'm having a moment. I'm having a moment. Heat. It is, yes. I'll find it. Never mind. We'll work it out. I've clearly put things in a slightly different order. I'm not going to go over there. I'm literally all over the place compared to the notes that I've got. So skulls, we essentially talked about this last week, that skulls themselves, because of their composition in terms of calcium, essentially they're very good as magnetic kind of conductors and electrical conductors, which is very, very, very interesting, I find. So they themselves are possibly a tool in themselves. And the cavity inside becomes basically a resonator. It reflects those magnetic waves and it focuses them onto a specific place, particularly the pineal gland. So really the skull itself, here's another one just here, slightly small, this is a real one here, is magical, if you like. For some reason it is kind of a tool. Let's go on to slide 5, please. Ah, now I found the right notes. How stupid. Rightio. No, I haven't. No, I haven't.
So, while we're waiting.
No, let's just go for it. Let's just give up. We'll work it out. It's not rocket science, is it? Slide 5. This is the thing that really got me. I'm wandering around the old countryside, checking out a few things, particularly refining and refreshing on some of the local sites so I can write up more information. And I went back to St. Michael's. St. Michael's, as you can see, is on a hill, so it's a toot site in itself. But most importantly, I noticed that all the windows and all the doorways had skulls or heads. Can you see that in the picture? Heads on every single one. And I'm wondering, well, what's that all about? What's the deal? Why would we have heads? What's kicking off here? So I thought, well, time for an experiment. So this week's experiment, basically, if we go to slide 6, is the function, if you like, of skulls. Now, or heads. Whoops. That's slide 7. We'll come to that in a minute, please. Can you go back to slide 6?
Oh, sorry, did I miss
There we go. That's all right. That's absolutely fine. So I've asked you all, and if you haven't already, to basically photocopy, or you can draw it. You can draw a smiley face, actually. That might work just as well. A skull. Okay, and I'm going to do a little bit of kind of compare the market. .com just here. And what I want you to do, I'm putting it down on the table, but I'm going to hold it in my hand so you can see really. What I want you to do is use this kind of little test that we've done, this little kind of sensing, and what can you pick up from a simple photocopy or a picture of a skull on a piece of paper.
Interesting. Do you want me to put it on the table or in my hand?
Yeah, I mean, I've just held that to one side with my fingers like that so everyone can see, but you could do it on the table as well.
Well, okay. Well, I'm getting heat again.
Isn't that interesting? Isn't that interesting? I've got next to me 3 skulls and a pinted out skull, as it were. And in all honesty, I'm getting the same response off of each one. Does that make sense? As in,
You say again.
I'm feeling something. The client thing I don't know what JBX is on about. He's off about driving somewhere.
He's driving, so he can't. But he's saying the coin thing. He found the coin thing somewhere. But we'll figure it out later. Don't be texting and driving. Keep me safe.
You shouldn't do. It doesn't make sense.
Right. So
so the question is, did everyone else notice something going on, shall we say, with that? Let's see if anyone can put it. So I'm going to create or simulate a little bit of a situation. Now you can go down to number 7.
Oh, yes, sorry. Number 7. Yep.
Okay. And what I'd like you to do is arrange your photocopies of skulls into a circle.
Right. Have you seen the size of this? The size of this room, it's minute.
You see the size of my skull. That's why I've photocopied some very small ones.
I don't think mine's going to go in. Right, I'll give it a go. Hang on.
Give it a go.
Let's see. Can I do a circle? Whoa. In this tiny space I have. Hang on. 3, 4. Am I doing all of them?
All 8, yes. All 8. All 8.
Oh, look, just about. Oh,
I'm going quiet because I'm doing
look at that. Pretty circle.
Great stuff. Now, I, as you can see, have got my skulls pointing outwards. And what I want you to do is again, use your dowsing.
I've done it round the wrong way.
It doesn't matter. Doesn't matter because I'm going to try both, you see.
Okay, well, I've done it
hand, shall we say. And plain paper, nothing, drew a skull, felt pressure. So you actually felt nothing off the paper, but then you felt something from the skull itself, Graham. That's interesting. I'm going to come back to this, why it works as well. Because
he drew one. Because he drew one on paper.
Yes, well, there we go. Interesting. So what I want you to do now is, you can't probably see this. Can I just move my camera down? Can you see there my skulls?
Yeah.
Yes, I can't. Okay. Yeah. So what I'm doing essentially is feeling what's going on in the center. We've done this with stones and crystals and all kinds of things in the past workshops. But now we're doing pieces of paper with skulls on. Does it reflect that? Now, in a normal sense, I'd kind of take us on to the whole experiment with lots of different kind of materials and compare skulls to those. But for now, we're just going to squeeze into an hour. So we're just going to do the skulls. What can you feel on the outside? What can you feel on the ring of skulls? And what can you feel on the inside is the question.
Right. So on the outside. Might need to undo that. Get that out of the way. Right. Okay, on the outside. On it. Oh. Okay, and inside. Oh, yeah. So with each bit, I personally felt hotter or warmer. So from the outside and then on the skulls was warmer, and then inside was even warmer still.
Okay. Now, your skulls are facing inwards, aren't they?
They are, yeah.
Turn them around so they're facing outwards, and does it change?
Okay. Let's see. 3, 4. You can't see my skulls. They're very sexy skulls. That's, oh, where's the screen there? That's my sexy skull. Right, hang on. Pay attention. Okay. Oh, have I missed one? Yes. Yeah. And there we go. 7, 8 even. Okay, so we're doing the same again.
Yes.
Hmm.
What?
I don't. Well, I think I mean, I'm not sure because it's hot here anyway. But I feel like that was warmer in the center than it was in the first set. So when it
Okay.
was round, I felt it was a little bit warmer, but I'm not sure. I think it was.
Okay. So Graham's getting a bit of a tingle on the outside.
To me, I can feel that.
Carl's no change. Doesn't seem to matter. So here's the thing that might or might not matter. As I said, I'm looking at how skulls. Why is a skull on every single doorway? Why is it on every single window? You can go and check loads of churches and find all kinds of examples of this. It's not just the one that I went to. So what I am doing in this little experiment is, as you can see, you can move on to slide 8 if you want to as well. I'm taking one of those little skulls away. Ta-da! Just like that, as if by magic.
Yep.
And what do we find?
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, I don't feel as warm in the center anymore.
Okay. And what about that area where you've now created a gap?
Hang on. Oh, right. Oh. Oh, now, funnily enough, that's warmer.
On the outside or inside?
I'm feeling that between the two skulls. So my hand was like on top, like near the two together. If you get what I'm saying.
Excellent. What happens, Graham and Carl, when you take the skull away?
Ah. Yeah. See, they're getting it as pressure. I'm getting it as heat.
That's okay. All you're doing really is describing. You're finding different ways to describe the same electrical
There you go. Less warmth there.
electromagnetism. It sounds less warm.
So I think they're slightly like a couple of seconds behind on us.
They are. That's absolutely okay. So what I'm kind of picking out is a flow, if you like, that the skulls in their place both contain and push away. Does that make sense? So they're kind of not wanting to put words into people's mouths, but they're quite protective in that sense. And particularly if you face them outwards. And as Graham says, take one of those skulls away, and that protective circle suddenly collapses in on itself, and everything goes. So if that protective circle is part of a sacred space, and it's guarding the sacred space or helping form the sacred space or an intricate part of the sacred space, those skulls become an important part of that sacred space. Those skulls become part of, I'll use the word protection for want of a better word. They certainly kind of contain the energy. They, when you take them away, they let it go. So they're obviously part of the structure, the physical structure, and the energetic structure. Now, can we go down to slide 9, please?
Yes, I know that picture well. That's a good picture.
Yes. Yes. So I have this theory, and I mentioned it last time a couple of weeks ago, and I'm going to mention it again. Egyptian funerary rites are very interesting because when a body is being prepared, when the pharaoh is being prepared for the afterlife, they strip out all of the internal organs. And the internal organs go into what are known as canopic jars, and they're stored very ceremoniously and very careful, apart from the brain.
Yeah.
Apart from the brain. The brain, effectively, is chucked away. So most people that I've read have kind of assumed that the Egyptians thought that the brain was useless. The Egyptians thought that the seat of the soul, the seat of the spirit was in the heart, therefore it was very important. And that the brain did sweet FA, basically. My supposition is this. It's not about the brain, it's about the skull. Because if we take the brain away, we end up with that skull that we saw, the empty skull that we saw right back in slide 4. We end up effectively with a cavity resonator. A cavity resonator that's very potent. That's in itself, one of them is a tool, it does something. We haven't found out quite yet what, but we're going to. A bunch of them together, as we can see, are going to be even more impressive than those pictures of skulls that you just drew. They're going to be even more impressive than a model of a skull. They're more impressive than a model of a face pasted on a church. Does that make sense? And yet they're all representations. All of these things are representations of this skull, this void, this amazing kind of thing that is inside well, on top of our head. It's part of our head, isn't it? Yes. This cavity, this structure, it's reflecting magnetic waves. Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, that wasn't anyone saying anything. Okay, brilliant. So my kind of thought, and I'm sure someone will come up with a converse thought, is that essentially during this kind of funerary rite, when they were preparing the body, it was more important that the brain wasn't in the skull because the skull itself was actually an important part of the rite. And that would kind of make sense within the rest of what I'm going to speak about. So, can we go on to slide 10, please? Now, I'm going to do a whistle stop because I've just seen what the time is, and I'm looking down my slides. Slide 22, slide 10. I've got to do a slide per 30 seconds. No, I haven't. A slide per minute. Yeah, that's okay. That's all right. That's not too bad. Okie dokie. So I kind of got to this point of thinking, well, 10th century churches, skulls. I wonder if there's any precedence to this. I wonder what kind of went on before. So I started tracking back and tracing back all kinds of documents and pictures and all kinds of wonderful things. And I pretty managed to find my way back 9,000 years ago. Now, I don't think I've got it on here, but the corollary is that actually we can now go back with Gallipoli Temple beyond that as well to about 17,000 years ago. But that I've only just noticed very recently in regards to another thing. So this gives us a good estimate. 9,000 years is quite a long time anyway, isn't it?
Oh, yeah.
So these are basically skulls. You'll notice they're covered in bits of plaster. They're covered in bits of shell, all kinds of stuff. And so the thing about these is they'd be found as a group together. Okay, most of them are adult males, sometimes women and children, but essentially they found in Jericho area, but they've been found across the world in other places. But this was the main kind of area we found them. So we can find skulls being kept as ornaments, kept as something sacred, something special for at least 9,000 years. And like I say, I can take that now back even a few more thousand years than that. Very quickly in there, that is on the right-hand side, the tale of Ahat, or Epic of Ahat. It's the Canaanite myth, and basically it dates to approximately 1350 BCE, and talks about pouring lime on skulls to essentially again preserve them. And this is a few thousand years ago. Everyone recognise the picture down the bottom left, the Memento Mori, Pompeii. This is a wall tile, by the way. Do you recognise the triangle? I asked you this last time. Do you recognise the triangle at the top?
I didn't, but somebody did.
Okay, and I'm specifically asking Graham D and you as well. And well, I won't. Yes. Anyway, particular people might kind of look at this in a way and go, "Oh, yes, we know what that is. That's a compass and a square there, and
Oh. Well, that was a bit thick of me then, wasn't it?
Oh yes.
Do you know what it is? I'm looking for more obscure stuff. That's why.
That's all right. It's actually not anyway. It's Egyptian, and it's as you can see, good 2,000 years ago, and it's actually an Egyptian measuring instrument with a plumb line, as you can see, and a symbol of the soul and all kinds of stuff. But stuck in the middle of there again, skull, very important, center part of this little tablet there, and then moving forwards into the Gospels. We've got a little picture there of Herodias. More importantly, her daughter Salome, and she essentially dances before Herod, who we all know about because of the children and all that sort of stuff. And basically, Herod is so thankful. He says, "What do you want?" And her mother says, "Quick, go and get the heads of John the Baptist." And she kind of goes, "Okay, I'll have the heads of John Baptist." So off they go, they chop his head off and they bring it to her. Essentially, what this leads us onto is a little bit that we're going to come back to in a minute, that heads started to be collected by the Christian church. Skulls, importantly, started to be collected by Christian church. In fact, the skull of John the Baptist is meant to be in Rome, and it's also meant to be in Istanbul. And it's also meant to be in the cathedral. Everyone claims they've got a skull of John the Baptist. Why wouldn't they? Very important skulls are. Well, let's just jump down to our next slide, slide 11. You've got that? Yes, that's excellent. Good stuff. So, tracing our story of skulls and tracing our story of heads, really, and skulls. Very important, all of these, because they're going to come together in a minute. You have to remember these little facts as we kind of pick them out. So, for example, the Mabinogion, which is about 1,000 years, less than 1,000 years ago, essentially, to cut the story short, Bran is mortally wounded and has his head cut off, which you would think would be the end of the matter, but his head carries on talking, which is probably quite annoying, really, and carries on talking for quite a while. So the Mabinogion part of this story is Bran's talking head, this magical head that gives out all kinds of guidance and all kinds of wisdom and all kinds of things. And essentially, it's carried a long way over from Ireland to England into Britain. It's basically buried in the White Tower, now on White Hill. I'm not going to go into my kind of run of which one it is, but it doesn't really matter. It's somewhere in the UK. I quite like that little one at the bottom there, which is Whitechapel Mount, because it looks way more like a good toot mount, a good skull mount, if you like, than the Tower of London does. The Tower of London looks a little bit on the flat side, but there you go. That's probably the angle of the picture. There we go. Okay, can we skedaddle down to our next slide, please?
Mm-hmm.
As I mentioned, heads, skulls. they sort of become very, very important with the Christian Church. And we're not just talking, Church of England Christianity. We're talking all kinds of Christianity because, of course, Christianity has many faces and many guises, if you don't mind. I'm using the face word. And so we find all kinds of, I can never pronounce this, reliquaries in the forms of heads. So, for example, very quickly, that on the left-hand side there is St. Eustace, and it's, again, about 900 years old. What was very interesting was that essentially it's a wooden head that's kind of covered in silver gilt. And they didn't really bother opening it until 1956. Who wouldn't? You'd go inside there, wouldn't you? Go, what's inside? But no, they didn't. And basically, they found inside a number of fragments of bone wrapped in cloth with the title Relic Tituli, which is interesting. So there's that. It wasn't just a nice, pretty face. There was bone in there, probably head bone. So that's quite useful. Alexander, again, another 800, 900-year-old reliquary there. St. Catherine of Siena, just to whiz through on a quick, stop talk there. Basilica, San Domenico in Siena. You can see her skull there. There's still got a little bit of skin on there. So they just basically, what they do, let's be honest with you, is they they have the body of this saint, of this, holy person. They chop the head off, they throw the body away, and keep the head.
Nice.
Nice. Well, very, very nice. Where does that come from, I ask you? Why would they do that? Where do they put the body? We don't know.
Yeah.
That never really talks about. Oliver Plunkett, there you go, coming into more modern times, 1681 there. Basically, he was hung, drawn, and quartered. There's a head there of St. Waltrude. Again, you can see these life-size things. And again, separated from its body. St. Valentine, that's an interesting one because who was St. Valentine? Did St. Valentine actually exist? That's all it says is there. St. Valentine doesn't tell us any more about it. There's no more background to it. But nevertheless, it could be a head that someone's represented as St. Valentine. Work that out. Why is St. Valentine important? I'm not going to go anywhere. Cheaper.
Messages coming up.
Are you saying, Carl, cheaper to keep a head than it is a body? Just throw the head away. Yes, I can explain, says Luce. I don't know what you can explain. That was a while ago. You can explain anything you like. And then we end up right over here on the right-hand side, essentially finding the skulls of St. Peter and St. Paul, again dating back to a couple of thousand years ago, kind of really there to, if you like, sanctify the Basilica de St. Maria. No, wrong one. Sorry. The Basilica of St. John. Get it right, Stephen. Okie dokie. Essentially, there. What?
So Luce says, I'll put it on the screen. She goes, they beheaded the royals to acquire the eye crystals and the pineal crystal.
I'll go into that later. Righty-ho.
If you know about crystals,
yes,
and their
the thing is, you don't find too many crystals in the eyes and the pineal, but we'll talk about that later. So, can we pop down to the next slide down? So, we talked about heads being relics.
Oh, Luce is a he. Sorry, Luce. Next slide. There we go.
I can't see. Your face is about the size of a.
Yes, we can't see your faces. We can't see it the best of times. Sorry.
No. So the fact that you get
even with my glasses on, I can't see.
We'll call you a they, and then we won't get confused. Essentially, looking at the whole kind of beheading thing, with the Nama palette, as you can see, has a lovely picture of a decapitation. And this one goes back, 33 centuries? So that's quite a long time back. The word capital punishment, of course, comes from the Latin caput. Very interesting. And just to kind of add to what you said really about royalty, the whole kind of concept of decapitation from ancient times has been thought of as an honourable form of death. Does that make sense? So, for example, many kind of nobles and royalty, as you say, would have been decapitated, but more because of its honourableness, more because it was supposedly quite quick, and better than having your head hacked at or having your body cut into, all kinds of stuff. So it's more an honourable death, if you like, when you look into it. I've got loads of notes. I'm jumping very briefly through them just to kind of throw in some thoughts. Medusa was beheaded. Now, the important thing about Medusa is, of course, her head again carried on living after her beheading. Okay, yeah, that's all right, Luce. Listen, the thing is, I'm going to tell you some stuff today that everyone will assume is that I assumed was a particular kind of thing, and then you suddenly read something or find something, you go, oh, that blows that one apart, doesn't it? A little bit. So ignore the crystals, but focus on the fact that yes, the pineal is really important, but with a skull, it's almost as important with a dead person because the pineal is no longer working, that the skull is empty. Okay. Now, a couple of other things, like I say, Medusa's head carried on talking. In fact, it was used as a weapon, because it would turn people to stone, as you well know. The Mima, I don't know if you've heard Mima. Again, it's part of the Norse stories. Basically, Mima's head, when it's been decapitated, again carries on talking and giving counsel. So this concept of heads talking, heads giving counsel, heads being something special, maybe even, like I say, used as a weapon. Again, it carries on throughout history. There's a thread of this. And so Gawain and the Green Knight, again, very similar thing. This time he pops his own head back onto his body, having been decapitated, and says, right, meet you next year and you can have your head cut off, see how you like it, kind of thing. Anyway, can we go on to the next slide, please? 14. Yes.
We're there. Yeah.
You're there. Sorry, I'm watching you move your slide. Looking over here and find the slide hasn't moved. It's because I haven't moved my slide anyway. This is just I was basically trying to work out how long a head would last after being cut off and whether it was interesting or not. If you're particularly interested, just go and Google it. Essentially, up to about 30 minutes, there's some kind of possible delta brainwaves going on in there, which is very interesting because delta brainwaves not only tying into death, but they tie into meditation, they tie into deep relaxation, they tie into out of body experiences, all kinds of things. Okay, that's interesting. That's very good. That's ace. We need to have a chat, don't we, Luce? As far as I can work out. Problem with seeing chats over here, seeing a slide over here, and trying to talk to a camera just here is all goes very, very wrong. Essentially, I've found there's loads of stuff about post death, and do the heads carry on kind of trying to speak, and do they kind of wink or grimace or whatever? Fairly hard to find out because most of it's kind of subjective. It's kind of someone said, "Oh, I saw this, do that," but it's interesting. Anyway, not interesting for today because we need to push on a little bit. We have 5 minutes. Right, can we go to the next slide, please?
You can, and don't worry too much about the time. Oh, don't worry about too much about the time. It's all good.
That's okay because we started slightly late, didn't we?
Yeah, we did.
So, that's all right. So I'll give us an extra few minutes then in that case. One of the other interesting things is, again, I was looking into heads and war and what happened in wars and battles and so forth. And I particularly ended up focusing in on the Crusades, like you do, just kind of out of curiosity, really, initially. And one of the things that they used to do in the Crusades was they used to essentially chop the guys' heads off, cut and bung them over the walls back to presumably their mates, their relatives, to freak them out, which is rather interesting. Bear in mind, these are so-called holy crusades going on here. Back to our church, who revere these things. They've got these kind of heads of saints contained, and special places, and then they go off to battle and they just bung them over the wall. The other thing that is quite interesting is, as you can see. From the sign up there, they quite often brought them back with them. Now, it's a long time ago. It's 1,000 years ago. So most of them have, to be honest with you, got lost, as you can imagine. But they kind of again go into our kind of brains, and we kind of get this survival kind of memory with pubs like the Saracen's Head or the King's Head. I bet you've seen a few of those around. But it just kind of starts to place things into pattern now, in terms of not only were heads sacred, not only were heads sacred if you were noble or if you were king specifically, or if you were a pharaoh, same kind of thing, really, isn't it? But in the other sense, they'd also be used as a kind of weapon. Maybe to throw over the walls, throw over the ramparts, or maybe to be held in the hand like the Medusa's head and turn people into stone. Now, don't look at that picture too carefully, because you can see all the heads there being thrown. Can we go down now onto our next slide?
Yep, we're there.
Okay. And this brings us by a roundabout way back to somewhere I came from and mentioned in our last talk there. The poor fellow soldiers of Christ and the Temple of Solomon, otherwise known as the Knights Templar. Now, they keep cropping up. I'm finding all kinds of... Where have you gone to? You've gone down to that one. Okay, you stay on that one. It's all right.
Sorry, I'll go back. It's because I'll have
it doesn't matter. We're heading there. We're heading to that one anyway. So yeah, go down. You might as well go down, because I've gone on to there. Thing about the Knights Templar is lots of people are doing lots and lots of research at the moment on the Knights Templar. They've really kind of come to the fore recently. I don't know if you watch the kind of Oak Island kind of money pit stuff that's supposedly associated with the Knights Templar. There's a bunch of guys on Blaze who are go around in their Rolls Royce to different parts of the world and trace various Knights Templar things, and they've got loads and loads of artifacts. The problem with the Knights Templar is we don't actually know a lot about them, and yet we know lots about them, and yet we know absolutely nothing about them. They are a bit of an enigma. Okay? And one of the reasons they're a bit of an enigma is because essentially the historians at the time didn't write much about them. You'd think they would, but they didn't. And the kind of most important historian for the old Knights Templar is a chapsky called Guillaume de Tyre. And he was writing back in the tag end of the 12th century. So, a little bit after them, at least 50 years after they'd done whatever they were doing. And according to his writings, they were established in 1118 by Hugh de Payne. And to cut the story short again a little bit at the moment, effectively, this chap Hugh turns up in Jerusalem at the king's palace, which just happens to be the Temple of Solomon up there. And he turns up and he says, look, I've got these knights with me. I think they might be really important because they want to defend all of the pilgrim routes into the city. And the king's kind of looking around and going, yeah, right. Yeah, which knights, where are they? And he says, well, these knights here. And basically, he's got 8 knights with him. 8 knights. Think about it. Okay. So the concept idea is that, these 8 knights will keep the roads and highways safe. What do you think the king said? He said, yeah, go for it. Okay. He gave him the royal charter to look after his... Do you know what I mean? And the best bit about it is he gave them quarters in the royal palace, which was built, as I say, on the Temple of Solomon. And the best other thing about it is they didn't do anything for 9 years. 9 years they didn't do anything. They admitted no new members. They allegedly lived in poverty. Okay. Protecting the pilgrims, there's not much note. In fact, the royal historian, as in Boudin, the King of Jerusalem's royal historian, Falk de Charter, doesn't even mention them. Doesn't even mention that these knights have appeared. And yet we've got this history that there's these really important Knights Templar who appeared and they looked after the Holy Lands while all the battles were going on and defended everyone. Well, we know they were quite good at, fighting, but that's another story. Can we go on to the next slide, please? The plot thickens. Royal bloodlines. I'm not going to go into royal bloodlines. I'll tell you why. Royal bloodlines is another rabbit hole. It's not a bad rabbit hole. And yes, murdering, I would use murdering rather than fighting. We talked about that with whole throwing heads over and things. I don't have a high regard for the Knights Templar, as you might well be finding out in a second. Royal bloodlines kind of comes into my talk next week a bit, as you will find out. So wait on that one because that gets really, really exciting. So don't jump that. Now, can you get? Oh yes, sorry, I'm one slide behind you yet again. Okay, so the plot thickens. In 1127, 9 years later, they return to Europe. The abbot, St. Bernard, welcomes them with open arms and writes a tract in praise of their new knighthood. And to top that all, basically, they trot off to the Pope and they tell the Pope what a wonderful job they've done and how amazing they are. And the Pope incorporates them as a religious military order and basically issues a papal bull to basically say that they are top guys. So much so that, in fact, they are top guys over kings, queens, monarchy, everyone but the Pope, of course. They're second to the Pope. But apart from that, they're given this kind of prime position, all based on turning up in Jerusalem and saying, we'll look out for you. Anyone getting any kind of woo conspiracy kind of things going on in your head at the moment? Any vibes?
Yeah, I'll say nothing.
You say whatever you like. Let's go down to the next slide down because this is where we get even more interesting. Okay. The question is really they were around for way before they were documented, at least 1114, and they were there's this whole kind of, and I'm not going to go into it too deeply because I'm interested in other parts of this. If you really, really want to read a lot, I quite like the Holy Bloods and Holy Grail. I think that covers a lot of stuff, shall we say, in relation to the founding, and they've done their research. They've looked into various documents and really where they might well have come from. I'm interested in some other stuff which no one else mentions. However, one of the things, for example, is that were they seeking treasure? Everyone says, oh, that's what they were doing. They spent 9 years digging away in Jerusalem looking for treasure. Now, again, I'm not gonna spend a lot of time on this because I'm kind of aware that we're heading into another kind of wormhole. We could talk about the Grail. Were they looking for the Grail? The answer is no. Simply because the Grail didn't exist. The Grail didn't exist until after the Knights Templars had been doing their business, and the Grail was actually invented by the Knights Templars. So we know it doesn't exist. There's not a thing mentioned in any biblical texts or any texts about the Grail, although I'm not going to go into it now. There is a possibility that I found something that could be maybe a Grail, but it's pigging big, to say the least. Very quickly, what else have we got on there? Oh, yes, everyone kind of mentions the Ark of the Covenant. We're looking for the Ark of the Covenant. The problem is there's some documentation about this Ark of the Covenant in various books in the Bible. And what it was, basically filled with various scrolls or tablets, and different accounts. Some of them say that it was still in the temple in Jerusalem, in Solomon's temple. Some say that it was stolen away by the Babylonians. Some say that it was stolen away by the Egyptians, and various other stories to explain its disappearance. Again, you'd think that with one or two historians there writing about it, they'd mention if the Ark of the Covenant was found. And I don't know how much persuasion that might give to someone going to a pope to say, "Hey, Popey, can we have can we be really super important?" Something in there I've mentioned is the Copper Scroll. This is basically one of the Dead Sea Scrolls, essentially made out of copper, that essentially talks about various different treasures buried in and around possibly the Temple of Solomon. The problem is with it, A, it's not actually that accurate. As you can see in there, it talks about, oh, you have to go to the east at a distance of 40 bricks, and then there's a silver chest, blah, blah, blah. But where from, where to? And the other problem about this, the Dead Sea Scrolls, is they were basically buried 2,000 years ago, and they weren't actually found until 50 years ago, 70 years ago now. So who knows? Was there other knowledge of treasure? Let's look at something that's really important. Can we go down to number 20? The next slide down, please. Are you there? You are there.
I am, yeah.
So essentially, the Templars held sway for a couple hundred years. They got away with it because they were, whilst they formed the basis of the banking system, and all kinds of other things, they were also, I'll have to use the word pissheads, to say the least, and fighters. They were very good at fighting, and as Luce said, quite good at murdering as well, and various things like that. So they weren't the kind of, this swashbuckling kind of legendary thing that we have in mind. And of course, they peed off quite a lot of people, to say the least, including the King of France, who managed to engineer a pope into place, who was, sufficiently engineered such that he was able to enact a little bit of an inquisition, as we know. They were all rounded up. I say all. Quite a few of them actually got away anyway. We can find them all over the place if you look. And they were put to death, put to torture, all kinds of stuff. Now, the interesting thing that I love here is this list. And it's basically the charges drawn up by the Inquisition. And essentially, it's a very interesting list. Now, bear in mind, I will acquiesce that, they were being tortured. But under torture, all of these people, all of these knights, essentially came up with the same list of things. Does that make sense?
Mm.
So normally under torture, you just go the first thing that comes to mind. Just make it up. Just let them, Whereas they came up with this list. And this list is a very important list because they said that as part of their temples, their rites and everything, they had idols. Okay. And those idols had faces. And some of them were even human skulls. Now, what's a bunch of so-called Christian knights doing? Idolizing, adoring, venerating skulls as gods. Doesn't that make you kind of think, oh, there's something there? Are they making this up, or are they saying something that we don't know? Because it would explain a huge amount of things. A bit like the earlier heads that we've talked about over history. They could talk to them. They could make them rich. They could make land germinate. They could give various kind of profit.
Oh. Don't know if you've gone your end. You've gone very quiet at your end. Are you still there? Can everybody still hear Steve talking? Because he's not talking on my screen. Anybody on the chat, let me know. Nope. What, you can't hear him either? Where's he gone? Where's he gone? Steve, come back. Oh, he's gone altogether. Oh, my apologies. And we were almost there. Hi, Kevin. No, keeping us in suspense. Yes, he certainly is. Right at the punchline. Well, I'm sure he'll be back at any second. Has anybody got... He got removed. No, he wouldn't have got removed. He's just lost connection, I think. So if anybody's got any questions while we're waiting to put to him after this is done, which, because we're nearly at the end, if anybody's got any questions... Hi, Kevin. If anybody's got any questions, then please do type them in now, and then we can bam them out after, while we're waiting for him to come back. There he comes. Yes, no, here he comes. He's coming back now.
We are seconds off where we want to get to. We're seconds off where we want to get
Yeah,
to.
you disappeared completely.
Okay, so
But it's fine.
Let's just refresh very, very quickly. The Knights Templar seem to have a fascination with skulls. They also seem to have got rather powerful. Out of how, we don't quite know. We know that when they started off, they were the so-called Poor Knights, and their sorry, my computer's switching off over here. The whole thing was, was started off on a basis of poverty, and they got very, very rich very, very quickly. At the same time as the monks, they were zooming on ahead. So we have to ask why. What was going on? Can we go to 21, please?
Mm-hmm. You're there.
We're there. So we're pretty much there. So as I say, we're talking about skulls, adoration of skulls, comparing it across history, across thousands of years of the use of skulls. We found out that skulls themselves seem to have, when we've measured them, some kind of electromagnetic power. They're associated with sacred landscape. They're associated with sacred place. They're associated with tomb mounds and churches built by the Normans, i.e. the Knights Templar, coming across. And we find all kinds of stuff going on. Here, we're looking at this rather lovely woman's head, a reliquary. Again, this was seized during the Inquisition from the Knights Templar. And a bit like the other head we talked about earlier on, it was hinged on top. And inside were a couple of head bones, wrapped again in white linen. And these ones were labelled Caput LVIIM, and they were a rather small woman. We're starting to touch on a little bit of a point here now. We're slowly getting there. Okay. I'm reading through my notes because there's so much to say, and indeed so much to kind of not say really at this point, because we could carry on down this route, and really I want to save up essentially the rest for next week's talk. We'll have another look at this head that they had, could possibly be quite an important head. Clearly, by the way, that's not the real head. If it was, we'd kind of, we'd be able to look inside and find stuff. Who knows where it is? But, AI does a wonderful job on making all kinds of things up for you in pictures. We're going to look next week at this hill on the left-hand side, which is basically called Skull Hill. So we're going to start looking at a few skull hills next week. What is the Skull Hill to do with our Knights Templar? What is that to do with skulls in themselves? What is it to do with this head here, Caput 58M? And if you see on the right-hand side, the cave there. Now, we haven't spoken about caves since last week. Caves are going to start coming back into our storyline again. So essentially, our next talk is really, what have the Knights Templar got to do with skulls, with heads, with Caput 58M, with Skull Hill, with specific magical caves, and most importantly, if you go on to the next slide, it's that da-da-da. What have you got to do with ISIS? The cult of ISIS. So next week will be the cult of ISIS. And basically, this will blow a few points off. We've kind of figured out the Knights Templars were naughty men. We figured out that they did a few things they shouldn't have done. We figured out that they got into power somehow. Now we're going to figure out what knowledge they had, why they were so focused on skulls. Okay.
Ooh, exciting stuff. Let me put the thing back down. No, very exciting stuff.
Yeah.
Looking forward
Lucy,
to
if you
that.
check the beginning of my talk, I was talking exactly about harmonic resonance and technology and electromagnetism. That's where we came from. That's where we started. So we have skulls that are literally technology, ancient, sacred technology. Go on, sorry, anyway.
Fantastic. Yes, anybody got any questions before we finish this stream? That would be lovely. I did ask while he was gone. So, yes, so, oh my God. So before we go, what is it we need to get for next week?
Pardon?
What is it we need for next week?
I don't know yet. I haven't worked out what experiment I'm doing. I'm right in the middle of editing a film, so I've been just gathering all my slides ready for this week. I knew I was going to do the skull experiment. I haven't quite worked out yet what ISIS experiment I'm going to do. I haven't got one. I'm going to have to make one up.
Okay.
But I want to quickly reply to Luce there that absolutely, when we talk about the Akashic records, you again have to go back to my first talk, rewatch my first talk where I'm talking about caves and their function. And essentially, what you're doing is you're connecting to do two things with caves and hills. You're connecting to the external, to the above, if you like, the goddess, the god, that kind of connection up there. And then you're going into the earth and you're connecting to the earth, the below, the inside, which ties directly into concepts of Akashic records, ties directly into kind of concepts of prophesying, ties directly into concepts of in the word's gone. Anyway, too many words, too many times. Ties into everything really. So, and bloodlines.
Let's see if I can find the other one.
I'll mention bloodlines next week.
Yes, bloodlines. Hold on, I'm just trying to see if I can get number one talk, and I will put the link in this chat as soon as I find it. Hold on.
Sweet.
Okay. Where's number one's chat? Part one. Here we go. I'm going to share part one in this chat. Here we go. Copy. Gosh, technology. I'm good, aren't I?
Right, there we are. Blood and water are very, very important, but not necessarily in the way you think, Luce. Blood's water all ties into our sacred space and how they work with the sacred space as a capacitor, i.e. a way of storing energy, and how we tie into that energy in terms of through our pineal, and how the water needs to be there. And there's been a lot of research recently about water found under the pyramids. What they will be finding all over the place, if they haven't already found it, is exactly the same thing at sacred sites. They all have either wells or blind springs or very obvious water sources quite often nearby, and it all ties into the electromagnetic circuitry of a sacred space and how we as water beings, if you like, connect those. Anyway, I feel we've gone on. Probably only about 5-10 minutes over, being as we started late.
You're kind of breaking up a bit. I'm not sure why. You still there? Yeah.
Yes, I'm here.
Okay. Are you reading? Are you still reading?
Yeah, I was reading. Yeah. Crown is only part of the technology.
Right. So what I've done is
Yeah.
I have put on last week's talk, and then I've just put on a link for next week's one. So you can click on the little thing underneath that to say notify me, and you'll get notified when next week's talk is on. But it's next Thursday, 7 p.m. And it's a follow-on from this one, and it's going to be about the cult of Isis, which I'm really excited about. So yes. And if you've not subscribed to my channel, please do, because it helps us carry on and do these fantastic things so that we can share our mystical and magical knowledge. So
Yeah.
next week we've got the cult of Isis. The week after, funnily enough, it's not a monthly thing anymore. We are going to be doing a talk about druids, which is going to be fab. So put that in your diary as well. So that's the following Thursday. We're just non-stop now. I'm just loving it so much. So please do subscribe to the channel. Please like, please love, please share with all your mates. Just tell everybody the Magic Toolbox UK. And if anybody wants to buy anything from the Magic Toolbox UK, I shall. Well, if you just type that in, we're first on Google. You just look us up. We're pretty unique. We make and sell all sorts of magical and wonderful stuff, banners, whatever you like, and we can make up anything. So please do like and subscribe predominantly to this channel. It takes one little click. Please do, because it's going to help us grow as a channel and help us do lots more exciting things with lots more millions of exciting magical people. And if you know anyone that wants to chat and do one of these talks, let me know. Okay, we're going to pop off now. Thank you so much for Steve for a fabulous talk as ever.
I'll chat to you afterwards.
Yes, I'm glad you said that. And I'll try not to pop off to the toilet with my microphone on this week.
Yay!
Yay! All right, I'll see you later, Steve. Bye for now.
Yay!
2 seconds. Bye. Let me get rid of that, and you can have my lovely face again. Look at that. Oh, no, it's not going to do it. Remove. There we are. Look at me all hot and bothered. Isn't it so warm? Thank you so much for joining us this evening. Thank you for everybody that responded in the chat. The chat helps bring up the vibes and gets everybody on the live. I don't know what it does. I'm not very technical, but if you do things in the chat, thank you, Luce. If you do type in the chat, it does help with the algorithm, is it? Yeah. So it's all helpful for me and for us as a channel, and to get everybody all connected. Well, I just want to connect all the magical world together. So everybody, all different types, and everybody's got their own opinions and their own views on everything that's gone on in the magical kingdom. And I just love hearing about all of it. And it's all great for me. So thank you so much. See, I rabble on, don't I, at the end? Sorry. Apologies. I love you all. And until next week on the monthly mystical. I might check. No, I'm not going to change it. I like the name. Monthly Mystical. I'll see you all next week. Don't forget, subscribe, like, and I'll see you then. All right. See you next week. Bye for now. Bye.